what value this organization could offer to our partners in the RTP community. And a few of the things that came out of that initial discussion referred to 4 primary areas. One is the importance of practical tools. It wasn't about simply understanding research and the best practices that were going on. They really wanted the participants to have practical tools that change the way they do business. So that's one that we focused on. Another was the fact that much of our focus was on technical experts, as NC State is very much about developing technical leaders and organizations. Our focus needed to be on how do you develop the management leadership capabilities of technical experts and organizations. And so a lot of the focus that we had was on that, particularly on improving their abilities to influence, sell their knowledge and information inside their own organization. And one of the quotes that came out of it, technical folks oftentimes are empathy challenged. And is there a way we can help with that because it's important in organizations? The third was discussion about the challenge for the organization. Commoditization continues to be a critical issue. The fact that you can innovate is wonderful. The challenge of maintaining a differentiation strategy in your organization through innovation is more challenging. The ability to replicate what it is that you innovate has become easier and easier. And so that speed with which you're able to innovate and leverage that innovation is so critical because and oftentimes becomes commoditized quite quickly. And then finally, the discussion around organizations are set up primarily in the development of management and technical leadership. And those are wonderful paths, career paths, but it's not sufficient in terms of what organizations are trying to accomplish. And I've just taken this term, I want to get your reaction to it because I just heard it for the first time earlier this week, the I-shaped employee. Have you all heard of the T-shaped employee? Yes. Okay, so the T-shaped employee, you've got a vertical T, part of the T, which is your discipline. Something you've learned that's content knowledge, information, capabilities that you have developed that's specific to a discipline. The top part of the T tends to be your emotional intelligence, your ability to work in teams, to engage others in the organization. All the types of things that we usually think about in terms of soft skill development with individuals. So the bottom of that T that now makes it an I, and the first letter in innovation, is about your ability to drive change in the organization. Do you have the abilities to engage others and create a discussion? Do you understand what it means about executing business models and business change in the organization and leading change processes? So it's about developing those skills of executing change in the organization. And so I love that idea of an I-shaped employee that has all three, the discipline knowledge, emotional intelligence, and the ability to drive change in the organization. And so it really encompasses what we're working with organizations based on what we've talked about with our advisory board. Now, the types of things that we offer cover a full spectrum from open enrollment programs that really about specific development capabilities that companies need on an ongoing basis, to consortia models where a few companies have similar needs and come together, to custom programs which are about individual company relationships, about specific development needs that are required, and then virtual programs, which is more of the first three, but done in a way that's delivered to multiple sites at the same time. If you can't bring all your employees to a single location, we're able to engage them in a virtually real-time development process. What we're going to talk about today is the top one. And this is research done by one of my team members in terms of what some other university executive education groups offer. And you'll see almost everyone offers open enrollment and custom programs. Virginia also does some work in consortia, and Duke also does work in virtual programs. But we do believe this is a unique process in the industry. And we're going to go through a little bit of an experience to understand why it's different and why we think NC State is particularly valuable in this type of engagement. So the Collaboratory, what is its value add? So the Collaboratory traditionally starts off as a half-day dialogue. It's a way to engage organizations around a significant challenge that they're facing, leveraging the expertise at NC State. We have a very defined process model of addressing this, and the ultimate solution is a roadmap to go from where you are today to where you're trying to get in the future. It's not to provide a defined solution. We're not presenting ourselves as a consulting organization. It's simply to take some experts to better understand what the challenge and the issue is so that you know how to move forward in the future. So how is it a little different? Because it's so client-defined, it's your organization really dictating how this engagement is going to take place. We're simply providing a process and some of the expertise to help with that process. It looks a little different from traditional executive education. So if you think through your traditional executive education process, from assessment to development, delivery, evaluation, and post-program, it's very different in terms of how it's applied. Beginning with the assessment process that is very collaborative with the organization and how the process is developed, rather than having a dictated process or trying to meet an existing model that the university uses. As you look down, and everything is very much about defining a return for the organization that clearly makes the client the focus of the activity, not so much the university's capabilities and what we offer. So, how does it help companies? Here's a list of 5 different ways that we've seen so far that the collaboratory model has been useful for organizations. Additional data collection to better understand the situation you're currently in. A better definition of the areas that investment is needed before you go out and hire a consulting organization to find a model that's going to be a solution for you. Identification of strategic gaps in your current business model. You may recognize that you have some either opportunities or challenges based on companies that are already out there, and we can help you understand where those gaps exist. Opportunity analysis of market dynamics. One of the areas that we get to work in significantly these days is in big data analytics. How do we take the data that's out in the public market and help define opportunities that you aren't currently addressing but could be in your organization? And then finally, with most organizations, the focus is on developing a roadmap of how we get from where we are today to where we want to get to in the future. So that's what the Collaboratory is all about. Here's some examples of some of the topics, I would say, that we've been engaged with organizations in discussion. Again, a lot of it has to do with our expertise. Why would you bring us in unless we had experts that you could sit down with and talk through? So these are some of those areas where we have experts at NC State. But it begins really with a framework, a process that we can use, because you've heard it all before, right? And we've got a nice mixture of academics and private, corporate, and groups in the room. We've all heard it before. Academics are doing fantastic, interesting, unique research. But the ability to translate that research in ways that's useful for companies oftentimes is very challenging. The Collaboratories is set up to make that translation effective, to bring folks in the room at the same time, to have an engaged discussion that allows them to take that research and knowledge and apply it to an organizational challenge. And so there's 3 steps in the process. The first one is before the engagement, is to better understand what it is we want to accomplish. Determine what the need is, engage with the senior leadership, understand the current state and what the goals are, and establish the key questions that we want to answer. From that, we'll set up an activity where we have some experts and thought leaders. We'll engage with those key questions with the process and determine what solutions and roadmap we want to establish in order to go forward. But that really, as I mentioned in that table, is just the beginning of the process in terms of how we engage with organizations. And so the post-event activity really is much more significant. So we want to do a little role play, because I could stand up here for another 45 minutes and try and describe this, and it wouldn't be nearly as valuable to you as if we spent a little time trying something out. So I want to try, and I asked a couple of my board members to suggest something for us. And so Greg Evans offered up an example. This doesn't represent his organization. Greg is the Director of Software Engineering at EMC. So this doesn't necessarily represent an EMC challenge. I simply asked Greg to offer an example for us to work on today.
Yeah, for 10 plus years, this challenge as a new technology is now available, which is less expensive to purchase by your customers. To resolve will require strategic level of changes driven by market adjustments and technical innovation. Implementation would extend through all levels of your company or organization. So I came up with 3 things as far as what effort should you apply. The first one would be, do you hold the current business strategy with a legacy product, or do you kill it? The second one is, do you start a new division to allow a separate focus on the new technology and product? And the third one is, do you split your company to allow a focus on the old and the new technology?
Online. And 2 other faculty have been very public about conflicting ideas about how you approach it addresses Greg's issue. Do we approach it as an organization that innovates internally in order to respond to this customer opportunity and the technology that's changing the way education is happening today? Or is it better process to set up a separate entity outside of the traditional business that can react outside of the constraints and the culture and the traditional challenges of innovation in organizations and can operate as a unique team out there? And so it's been a wonderful debate that's been going on between Christensen and Porter, both at Harvard, talking about what would be the best way to respond to that. So normally when NC State develops a collaboratory, we're probably not going to get Christensen and Porter to come in and sit down as part of the conversation. Unless you've got $100,000 you want to invest for half a day of their time, which you could do. Normally we have faculty though who understand the issues that these 2 folks are talking about. And the debate, because it's not a clear one in response to Greg's challenge, about what is the best approach. Is it to do internally, or is it better to set up a separate group? We have worked with organizations that have done both successfully and unsuccessfully. So the factors that drive that decision really rest within the culture of the organization, the nature of the innovation, the type of disruption that's going on. And so it's not a clear decision, and it needs to be part of a discussion that we have as we start to understand the approaches we want to take. So I thought I'd put those up there, but what I'd like to do, what we're going to do now, is have an activity here in the room. And the way we do this, and I've set it up as a V here, not to celebrate Vanderbilt, if anyone here are Vanderbilt fans, success in baseball, World Series, but to create 2 separate teams. These 2 teams are going to work on the same question, but we work better in small teams. And after the small teams kind of decide and define ways that they would approach it, we'll share across the different groups and see what we've developed. So we have about 8 to 10 people at each table. What I want you to do is split up into 2 teams at each table. And this is the way it's worked with our clients so far. Half of the group at the table is going to represent the organization X. And the other half of the table is going to represent NC State thought leaders. All right? So what I'll start to do is ask you all, we'll have these folks right here, the 6 along with Greg, to represent Greg's leadership team. You folks will represent folks that report to Greg and have to help him make a decision about how you're going to not only respond to this competitive threat, but how the organization is going to respond. So put your business unit hat leader head on and say, how am I being challenged right now, and how do I particularly want to be the head of R&D or the head of production operations, and say, this is how I'm going to be challenged. And you folks are going to be my NC State leaders, thought leaders. And so if you want to pick one of those folks that you represent, you to kind of question and challenge them. And I can give you some kind of list of questions you could use, but mainly I want you to just think from your own experience. What would you want to know before you could answer that question about the direction they're going to go? All right? So be prepared. Start thinking about some questions that you're going to ask them about what is this challenge they're facing, and how is their organization culture is currently set up would be an effective approach they're going to take.
We'd like to know what the revenue forecast we can expect from this, and also what are the resources and requirements that we would need to look at.
That's on the side of the table.
That's why we're here talking to all of you. We were hoping maybe you all had some expertise.
We're very good at asking tough questions. at challenging, at critiquing. And so throughout that process, the organization should start to be thinking more deeply about why is this issue coming up at this stage in the process. It's easy to look at the competitive, the disruptive technologies, but what's going on today in our organization that is resulting in these questions coming up? What we would do at this stage is to take those two conversations and merge those and define some 3 or 4 core issues that the organization needs to accomplish in order to move forward, in order to be able to either hire a consultant, find out more data, hire an MBA team to be able to do some research. What are some answers that we need to find more information on in order to be able to move forward? What we would do is stage 2 of the collaboratory experience, though, is leverage the faculty in the room and their knowledge and experience of best practices, innovation that's going on, to start to explore some ideas. And again, we don't want to go too far, and we're not going to do that today, but you can see how taking this conversation to allow an opportunity for the faculty to not necessarily suggest solutions, but to share some insights from research and best practices across industries that the organization might want to look at. But the outcome of the process simply would be 3 or 4 areas that we think would provide a roadmap for the organization to start exploring a solution to the challenge they're facing. After that activity, we would get engaged in a number of different activities around, do we know enough to decide yet about the first question? What best practice insights were we able to share as a group? What can we learn from other companies? And this is where one of the wonderful things that NC State has to offer is a breadth of relationships around this area of companies who are willing to engage with other organizations and share insights. I think I put it further on, so I'll come back to it later. Here are some of the companies that have been supportive in the past of our collaboratory activities, that opened their doors to non-competitive organizations and willing to share their practices and approaches to similar kinds of challenges. And we think this is one of the things that really makes this area very unique and valuable, is the ability to work collaboratively across different industries. Now, I did have one other challenge. We'll see if we have time to get into. Billy Gray, who is a marketing manager at Siemens, shared this challenge that he's facing on instilling innovation in a manufacturing culture. Billy, you want to share a little bit about this?
Yeah, so basically, you have to imagine, and I know a lot of you, just doesn't change like consumer electronics, televisions or cell phones. It moves much slower and is primarily driven by IEEE and ANSI standards, so kind of institutional or government standards define the box that you operate in. And since things don't change real quick, there's a herd of competitors that just kind of zig and zag down this corridor, defined by the standards and what the market kind of pulls in. So there's not a lot of incentive maybe to break from that pack and try something more radical. On the other hand, you're really constrained in terms of how successful your business can be in terms of profitability if you're just kind of in that larger group doing the same thing as everyone else.
Thanks, Bill. And then 2, what is the best way to engage customers in that process? To involve them in the definition for their organization around where innovation investments should be made. One of the ways we would do in this case is we would probably use, there's a number of tools and assessments that NC State has developed in order to help organizations understand their environment a little bit better. One of those is an innovation management maturity map. And basically the process here is a survey sent out to anyone in the organization who the corporate leaders want to be involved in providing insights, their perceptions, as to how well they manage innovation currently. And innovation is defined in this process as either falling in the areas of idea development, understanding of the market, development of portfolios, the platform management, or project management in the process. And then in terms of what it looks like in terms of organizational process is strategy of the organization, the culture and structure, the processes in place, the tools and techniques available, and how metrics are done. And so we go out and ask employees, how strong and positive are we in these different areas when it comes to innovation? And based on their feedback, we have some understanding of where the focus on innovation improvement needs to be addressed. And for this organization, I think it was reflective of it, it was around development of ideas and the culture and strategy of the organization in order to be able to support that environment. And so that's how we start this type of engagement, is do that survey and be able to come into the conversation and say, based on what you said, it reflects our understanding, it's accurate in this case. Sometimes organizations don't know where to focus. But in this case, it's an accurate understanding. We need to focus on the beginning of the pipeline, getting ideas into the innovation process, and then the culture and strategy of the organization to help support that. And then we go through the same type of process, again, of creating a collaboratory event where we bring the leaders together to have a discussion, use some of that data and organizational data to drive the discussion, and then define some how we're going to go about answering those questions. Here again with some of the folks that we've used in the past for these kind of discussions. Again, Paul Muggy would come back simply because he's the director of our innovation management process. Fred Rank is one of the folks that works with that team, who used to be vice president at Meet West Vaco in R&D, and he currently works with the tech algorithm, which helps define whether innovations are likely to be successful in organizations. And Lee Clark Sellers, who in the past has worked for us in this type of capacity. She's an industrial fellow at Sims, and used to be here with NC State. She's now an innovation officer at Applied. So we really value at NC State having folks who come from the corporate environment, who understand how and why these challenges arise, but also have the opportunity to see across industries and research that's being done to understand the challenges more effectively. And this is the kind of post-event, is we develop a map to go from wherever the organization currently defined itself to moving up to an optimized level of innovation, to create an environment where innovation is fully internalized, results are repeatable and predictable, really defining innovation as an important part of the organization. So we're not going to go through Billy's, sorry, but I'm sure you're looking for an answer there. One of the things I want to ask you, though, as you were going through the process, what did you find was valuable? What would you, if you had been part of a legitimate collaboratory experience, what do you think would have been a valuable aspect of the collaboratory?
The most valuable aspect is everyone comes from a different background, therefore they bring a different perspective.
Diverse experience, diverse thinking, exactly. That's a good one. Other questions? Other valuable insights?
It's just the experience. I mean, just hear some of this was hard to me. I never did all that. Obviously, gone through something like this before. Same thing, you got the MDs, there's all those folks who've done this.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, we've seen this. It's
Very specific experience that can contribute to that conversation that you wouldn't necessarily know in advance until they sat down at a table together. Other things that you kind of saw.
Interjection of the objective resource with no motivators or agendas except solving the problem.
And that's critical for us to set that up. You don't want an environment where people are going to be defensive about their role in the process or that how they contributed to it. And hopefully you can clear the air of any political elements to this process before you get into it. But that's a critical aspect.
I thought they asked some difficult questions, things that we might not really want to answer.
Yeah.
But they forced us to think about it.
Yeah, that's great. I think one of the things that we try and set up is an environment where that's valued and allows it to happen. And actually, we try and facilitate it effectively so we can draw out that learning and insight as effectively as we can. But the most critical thing is that you have people in the room who are knowledgeable about both the problem and the practices and the potential ideas. And they're willing to engage in this manner. And this is why I feel like NC State, I've been at 5 different universities and all of them have been fantastic entities. NC State is the first one I've been at that I feel like faculty members are willing to sit down and have this type of conversation. That they really enjoy the engagements with companies around their challenges and don't just come in willing to project their research knowledge and their specific area of expertise. They simply want to understand what the challenge is and maybe be able to, working with their peers, discuss some of those ideas. And that's what I find that I've enjoyed being at NC State. It's really a very unique environment with faculty that value this type of experience. Now, the one things that we tend to see come out of this, and again, it's not simply, before I get into that, it's not simply this type of engagement, it's what's going to happen after this engagement. This is just the beginning of the discussion. The company's going to go in its direction. It's going to find opportunities to gain insights from consulting organizations, from other groups. One of the things that we set up, and I know you can't see this very well, is opportunities to go out and meet other companies. Here was a group that went out to Cisco to talk about how Cisco manages the virtual team environment. This was a group from Brazil that met at our Centennial campus to understand how universities set up an environment where there's so much collaboration between business and academia. Up there is a group that went out to Normancourt, out in Philly's environment, out there in Zebulon, to understand how their environment, the dynamics of change that's going on in their industry. And then there's a group from the military who sat down with Caterpillar to understand how Caterpillar has driven a change internal to their subgroup, to their specific part of the Caterpillar organization to be successful. And so all of these companies have opened their doors to willing to sit down and share how they have addressed similar kinds of challenges. And that's one of the things I think is really valuable at Collaboratory. Again, so we've got all these folks, and then you've got, again, what I think is so unique at NC State, all these centers of excellence that have not only really some of the leading thinkers in the nation, but also active applied research going on that addresses these type of challenges. So I find it to be a really valuable activity that we're developing that allows that university corporate relationship to develop. A couple of examples that we've had historically. One was a Fortune 100 company that was seeing basically their industry go away. They were about a $4 to $5 billion company, and their market was probably going to disappear in the next 2 to 3 years, and they had to redesign their entire product management and product innovation scope. And again, we started with the senior leaders to help redesign the structure and then develop workshops at the product management level to lead that change process. This was a manufacturing organization that is expanding rapidly, acquiring lots of new plants, and was struggling to figure out how to develop them as an integrated network and engage the different plants globally. Again, as you can see, these are not programmatic solutions. This is not exec ed coming in and delivering a leadership program, as much as we'd love to do this. This is about helping an organization understand a significant challenge so they can approach it more effectively. Fortune 50 company that was trying to take a new technology and develop a business service out of it. And researchers worked with them on a consultative solution model that they could go out to customers with. And then finally, a manufacturing plant that was seeing a 5x growth in the number of products that they were going to have to start managing. And they could not even conceive of that change in their culture. And so they needed to start looking at what were the changes they were likely to see down the road, and then start to benchmark with other organizations that have a much more diverse set of products so that they could see what it looks like in terms of a different approach to plant manufacturing. That's it. So that's a little bit about the Collaboratory. Thank you for participating in it. Any questions that you have about either NC State Exec Ed, the Collaboratory process, or some of the different projects that we've been involved in the past?